Hi guys, it's Ray. I'm going to do another coffee swirl type tumbler. I'm going to do it on this curved handled mug this time. This is actually a hog mug. This one is not from Maker Flow, but I do believe Maker Flow is selling this style now. They weren't when I ordered these ones. They only had the like boxy style mug. And I had bought these two intending to do the the hot cocoa drip North Pole hot chocolate blah 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 tumbler, and I just never got to it, so it's going to become a coffee swirl. Now this has been sitting while I did another cup. This is the Artisan Art Epoxy from DIY Epoxy. They're the samples from my Resin and More February box. And I'm not going to lie, this is not my favorite resin right now. I may still buy a smaller container to try another time, but so it's just not working in my environment. The bubbles are coming out, but it's a lot of work. So I watched Luxinda Swirl do one where she actually started with a white resin. So I'm going to try that way on this one. I will link to her video. You can see her method. I honestly don't know if I don't know what she tinted it with. I can't remember. And I don't remember if she started on a white tumbler or a stainless tumbler. So I'm going to use Allumilite white opaque dye to make my resin white to begin with, and hopefully mixing that in will pull a bunch of those bubbles out. So we'll see what this brings me. Try and get a bunch on and then hold the turner still. This is one of my kind of lighter, well, all of my turners are fairly light, so they like to slide around on this table because it's covered in contact paper, so it's pretty slick. But because this is a swirl, I do want to be fairly heavy on the resin, and I don't really want to waste it, so I'm just going to go for it. Okay. So I'm going to get this all coated. And I'm only going to do 2 colors of brown this time. I picked Spice and Cocoa from Pixiss. And I'm going to go ahead and use the Pixiss white because I really haven't given the Pixiss white a fair shake yet because I always reach for my Pinata white. So I'm going to force myself to step out of that bubble. This may be too much resin for this size cup. So I'm going to scrape a little bit back off. I don't want it dripping too much or bulging. I'm honestly not even sure what size coffee cup this is. I think it's a 14 ounce, but it could be a 16. So I do want to make sure I have the handle completely coated and in and around the edges. And it is winter in New York, so the spray paint job was terrible, which is part of why I decided to try the white base method for this one. Okay, so I'm going to get these gloves off. Sorry, I try to remember to have a spare set handy, but I didn't this time around. So I'm going to get another pair on. If you don't want to use extra gloves, you could just wipe them off with a baby wipe, but in the essence of time, I'm just going to hit this with the heat gun real quick to try and get some of those bubbles out. And I am going to have to put my hands on this a little bit more at some point because I don't want it to separate. But these are my inks. I'm going to shake them up and then open them all up. So again, I have cocoa and I have spice. Hopefully they're slightly different in color. I used the cocoa before, but this is the first time I'm using the spice. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the cocoa. And I'm not going to forget the handle, and I'm not going to forget the bottom. I can already say, using the white base in the resin, not just the white cup, the colors pop way more. It's interesting. It's not something I would have thought to do. So I'm glad I saw her video as well. I hadn't actually watched any videos when I did my first one. And I think we uploaded 2 videos the same day. So I watched hers after I'd put mine live. I'm going to try and get the white. I'm probably going to drip a bunch on the table, but I want it more dripped onto the side, not the top or the bottom. The closer to the top you get it, the bigger it'll go, and the closer to the side you get it, the further it'll sprawl. And don't forget to get some white down the bottom. And I feel like this is taking a lot of white to get any white to show up. But so let me come back over with a little bit of color. I don't really have much white on the bottom. And I am developing a couple of void spots like alcohol inks sometimes do. Not too worried about them yet. But I'm going to hit this with the heat gun quick. This is a Wagner Furno 550. It has a couple different fan settings, a bunch of different heat settings. I'm going to give it a high fan and a medium heat. And just let it move the inks a little bit. You can, at this point, when the inks are moving, pick this up and tilt it around. I am not a take a cup off a turner and spin it around in circles type person. Makes me nervous. So I'm going to pass on that step. You can do that with any of your alcohol ink cups. It's just not something I like to do. So I am just going to move it with this heat gun and call it good. I'm going to do a couple more drips of the dark, I think. I almost feel like I've overmixed it at this point. Although I do kind of like, see, this is what I'm talking about when I say there's a void spot. The resin has like repelled there, so I'm going to wait for that to come back around again. I'm just going to rub it with my finger a little bit. There's one right here too. I'm not sure if you can see that on camera or not, but to the eye it stands out. See, like that's another area where it's doing it. But I'm going to let this spin out as is. If it wants to change a little bit, it'll change a little bit. And I will come back in and decal it when it is ready. So, that's that. Okay, I am going to put the second coat, final coat, on this. I did go ahead and decal it. It says, "Life is wonderful after coffee." The second coat I'm putting on it is also the DIY Epoxy's Artisan Resin that I was testing out. So this epoxy mixes much thicker than anything I've used before, which is a bit of a challenge. I did really warm it this time, and I still have micro bubbles, but not as many. It doesn't look white and frothy like the last couple batches I did. I did notice that this is drier to the touch, much slower than my other resins, which could be a factor depending on how long you like to take them off your turners and put them on a drying rack or whatever. So I don't really feel like these contained enough resin to be a fair judge of the epoxy as a whole. I mean, I didn't have enough to do any kind of a mold with it, and I've put 5 coats on a cup so far, and I am out of this first set that I had. I had 2 because I ordered a premium box, so I don't know. I'm not sold on it yet. Maybe by the time I get to the end of the other one, but I do really like the finish. I just don't think it was enough to really judge. So I'm just going to get this coated. It doesn't have to be a super thick coat because the base coat was really thick to begin with. The base coat was actually a little too thick. I do have a little drip under the handle here, but I'm not worried about it. This resin is pretty odor-free. I will give it that if you're sensitive to the smells of the resin. This one doesn't smell terrible, which is a plus, definitely. So I just don't really want to do a thick coat this time. I don't want it moving around too much. I did have to sand a little spot on the bottom here. So It did where this swirled ended here. It had a little bit of a bump, so I did sand it a little bit. It may still have a slight lump when it's done, but it's not going to affect the way the cup sits or anything, or how you would drink from it, so I'm really not that concerned with that. I think it'll be fine. So I just want to get the handle well coated, but not too much on it. And make sure the rim is coated. This cup has a little bit smaller surface area, so it doesn't really need a ton. And my lump at the bottom, because this cup curves down, it's not necessarily a leveling of the turner issue, it's just a too much resin in that base layer issue. So I do have one more of these cups, and when I go to do the other one, if I do this type of style, I will keep that in mind and start with less. So that is about it for this one. Pretty quick and easy finish. This is just a clear coat, like I said, so what you're seeing now is exactly how it's going to look when it's done. I'm going to just torch it quick for bubbles, because I know it does have some major bubbles. Always keep your torch moving. Don't sit and concentrate on one spot. Don't forget about your handle and your bottoms. Alright, so that's it for her. Once she's done spinning, she can sit and cure for 3 days and be cleaned up and delivered.